The evening shift at Sonny's Diner was winding down as rain pattered against the windows. The small restaurant sat on the corner of Oak and Maple in one of Detroit's struggling neighborhoods. The once bright neon sign flickered weakly, casting a soft glow on the wet pavement outside. Inside, Dorothy Wilson wiped down the counter for what felt like the 100th time that day. Dorothy had been working since 6 in the morning. Her feet ached in her worn-out shoes, and the small of her back throbbed from hours of standing. But she couldn't go home yet. The bills on her kitchen table wouldn't pay themselves, and her 2 teenagers needed new school supplies for the semester starting next week. "You should head out." "Dorothy," said Hank, the cook, as he cleaned the grill, "I can finish closing up." Dorothy glanced at the clock. It was almost 10 p.m. "Just need to finish these last few tables," she said with a tired smile. "Besides, you know Mr. Peterson gets mad if we close even 5 minutes early." Hank shook his head. "That man counts every penny twice. Been working here 8 years, and I've never seen him give anyone a break." Dorothy just nodded. Complaining wouldn't change anything. The diner's owner, Mr. Peterson, was notoriously strict about expenses. Just last week, he'd scolded her for giving a regular customer an extra packet of ketchup. As Hank disappeared into the back, Dorothy looked around the empty diner. The vinyl booths had seen better days, their red covering cracked in places from years of use. The black and white checkered floor needed a good scrubbing, and the jukebox in the corner hadn't worked properly in months. Still, this place had been her lifeline for the past decade. Dorothy had started waiting tables when her husband walked out on her and the kids. Back then, Tommy was just 8 and Lisa barely 6. Now they were teenagers with growing appetites and growing needs. The child support checks came late when they came at all, and Dorothy had long stopped counting on them. She finished wiping the last table and went to turn the sign from open to closed when movement outside caught her eye. Through the rain-streaked glass, she saw 2 small figures huddled under the diner's awning. They weren't dressed for the weather, just thin jackets that looked a size too small. The taller one, a boy who couldn't be older than 12, had his arm around a smaller child, a girl who looked about 8 or 9. Dorothy watched as the boy peered inside, his eyes lingering on the pie display. The little girl pressed her face against the window, leaving a small foggy mark from her breath on the glass. Something about their expressions made Dorothy's heart twist. She recognized that look. It wasn't just the normal hunger of kids wanting dessert. It was the deep, gnawing hunger of those who hadn't eaten properly in a while. Before she could second-guess herself, Dorothy unlocked the door and opened it. "You 2 okay out there?" she called. The children jumped, startled. The boy pulled his sister back slightly, ready to run. "We're not causing trouble, ma'am," he said quickly. "Just waiting for the rain to stop." Dorothy noted his polite manner despite the wariness in his eyes. "It's coming down pretty hard. Why don't you come inside for a bit? It's warmer in here." The children exchanged glances, having one of those silent conversations that siblings often do. Finally, the boy nodded and they stepped inside, careful not to drip too much on the floor. "Have a seat," Dorothy said, gesturing to a booth near the heater. "Can I get you something to drink? Maybe some hot chocolate to warm you up?" Again, that look between them. "We don't have any money," the boy admitted. "Don't worry about that," Dorothy said. "It's just some hot chocolate." As she prepared the drinks in the kitchen, she could see them through the service window. They sat up straight, not touching anything, the boy's eyes constantly darting to the door as if expecting to be chased out at any moment. The girl was thin, her dark hair pulled back in a neat but fraying braid. Her coat had a tear at the elbow that someone had tried to mend with inexpert stitches. Dorothy brought over 2 steaming mugs and set them down. "I'm Dorothy," she said. The boy hesitated before answering. "I'm Robert. This is my sister Lily." "Nice to meet you both," Dorothy said, sliding into the seat across from them. "Where are your parents tonight?" Robert's face closed off immediately. "Our mom's sick," he said after a pause. "Dad's not around anymore." Dorothy nodded, not pushing. In this neighborhood, absent fathers and struggling mothers were common stories. "Your mom knows you're out?" "She's asleep," Lily piped up, speaking for the first time. Her voice was small but clear. "We didn't want to wake her. She needs rest to get better." The children sipped their hot chocolate carefully, savoring each mouthful. Dorothy noticed how they held the mugs with both hands, absorbing the warmth. "When's the last time you 2 ate?" she asked gently. Robert looked down. "We had some crackers this afternoon." Dorothy stood up. "Stay right here." In the kitchen, she quickly prepared 2 hamburgers with extra fries. Hank had already gone home through the back door, so she worked alone, adding a slice of cheese to each burger and a generous helping of ketchup. Company policy strictly forbade giving away food. Mr. Peterson even had cameras installed to make sure employees didn't sneak meals for themselves. But Dorothy positioned herself to block the view as she worked. When she brought the plates to the table, Lily's eyes widened. "Are those for us?" "All yours," Dorothy said, setting them down. "Eat up while they're hot." The children needed no further encouragement. They ate with the careful restraint of those who'd learned to make food last. But Dorothy could see their hunger and how thoroughly they cleaned their plates. While they ate, Dorothy chatted with them casually, learning bits and pieces of their story. Their mother had been sick for months with something that made her very tired all the time. Their father had left last year. They lived in an apartment about 8 blocks away. Robert had been trying to find odd jobs, mowing lawns, collecting bottles for the deposit, but it wasn't enough. "You two in school?" Dorothy asked. Robert nodded. "I'm in 7th grade. Lily's in 4th. We haven't missed a day." There was pride in his voice, and Dorothy felt a surge of respect for this young boy trying so hard to keep things normal. As they finished eating, the back door opened and Dorothy's heart sank as she heard Mr. Peterson's voice. "Wilson, why are the lights still on?" "We close at 10. The children froze. Dorothy stood quickly. "Just finishing up, Mr. Peterson. Had some late customers." The owner appeared, his thin face scowling as he spotted the children. "Who are they?" "We don't need street kids hanging around here." Dorothy stepped between him and the table. "They're paying customers, sir. Their mother's one of my regulars." The lie came easily, born of necessity. Mr. Peterson's eyes narrowed as he looked at the half-empty plates. "Make sure they pay full price. And lock up in 5 minutes or it comes out of your check." When he'd gone, Robert looked at Dorothy with panic. "We don't have any money." "I'm sorry, it's okay," Dorothy said, pulling out her wallet. She counted out enough to cover the meals from her tips for the day. It was money she couldn't really spare, but some things were more important than bills. "Why did you help us?" Lily asked, her dark eyes serious and too old for her young face. Dorothy thought about her own children at home, about the time she'd struggled to put food on the table, about the neighbors who'd sometimes slipped her grocery store gift cards or accidentally made too much casserole and brought the extra over. "Because that's what people should do," she said simply. "Help each other when they can." She packed up the remaining fries and added 2 slices of apple pie in a takeout container. "Take this home for later. And here," she scribbled on a napkin, "this is my phone number. If you need anything, food, help with your mom, whatever, you call me, okay?" Robert took the napkin carefully, folding it into his pocket. "Thank you, ma'am." As Dorothy watched them leave, huddled together against the rain that had slowed to a drizzle, she felt a mixture of emotions. Worry for these children, anger at a world where they had to fend for themselves, and a small, warm certainty that she'd done the right thing, even if it meant one less bill would get paid this month. She didn't know then how this simple act would ripple outward, touching lives, theirs and hers, in ways she couldn't imagine. She just knew that tonight, 2 hungry children wouldn't go to bed with empty stomachs, and for now that was enough. 3 days passed before Dorothy saw the children again. The dinner rush had just ended, and she was refilling salt shakers when the bell above the door jingled. Robert and Lily stood in the doorway, more hesitant than before. Dorothy smiled warmly and beckoned them to the same booth by the heater. "How's your mama doing?" she asked, sliding glasses of water toward them. "Not much better," Robert said, his voice quiet. "She tried to go to work yesterday but couldn't make it through her shift." Dorothy nodded, understanding all too well. She'd worked through fevers, back pain, and even a sprained ankle because sick days meant no pay. "What does she do?" "Cleaning at the hospital," Lily answered. "She says she'll be fine, but she sleeps a lot." Dorothy noticed the dark circles under Robert's eyes. The boy was carrying too much weight on his young shoulders. "Have you eaten today?" Robert shook his head slightly. "We had some cereal this morning. I was going to make soup later." "Well, you're just in time. We've got meatloaf special tonight." Dorothy touched Lily's shoulder gently. "You like meatloaf, sweetheart?" The little girl nodded eagerly. As Dorothy headed to the kitchen to place their order, she caught Hank watching her. "Those the kids from the other night?" he asked, flipping a burger on the grill. Dorothy tensed. "Yeah. Peterson's gonna have your hide if he catches you feeding strays." She bristled at his choice of words. They're not strays. They're children with a sick mother. Hank raised his hands in surrender. Hey, I'm not judging. Just warning you. He paused, then added more quietly. Make sure you ring it up as a mistake on table 4. I'll back you up if he checks. Dorothy's expression softened. Thanks, Hank. When she returned to the booth with 2 plates of meatloaf, mashed potatoes, and green beans, the children's faces lit up. Dorothy sat across from them while they ate, chatting about their day at school. Lily had won a math contest. Robert's science teacher had praised his project on solar energy. You two are pretty bright, Dorothy said, genuinely impressed. Robert shrugged, embarrassed by the compliment. Our mom always says education is the way out. Smart woman, your mother. I tell my kids the same thing. Dorothy hesitated, then asked, Does your mom know you're here? Robert looked down at his plate. Not exactly. She thinks we're at the library. I see. Dorothy chose her words carefully. I don't want to get between you and your mama. Maybe I should meet her sometime? She'd be embarrassed, Robert said quickly. She doesn't like asking for help. Dorothy understood that pride all too well. Tell you what, why don't you take something home for her? I bet she'd enjoy a good meal. When the children left that evening, they carried a container with meatloaf and an extra slice of chocolate cake. Dorothy had also slipped a $20 bill into Robert's pocket when he wasn't looking. It was money she couldn't spare, with Tommy needing new basketball shoes and Lisa's school trip coming up. But something told her these kids needed it more right now. The visits became a pattern over the next few weeks. Robert and Lily would appear during Dorothy's shifts, sometimes just before closing, sometimes during slow afternoon hours. She made sure they always had a hot meal, and often prepared something for them to take home. Hank became an accomplice, accidentally making extra portions or marking food as waste when it was perfectly good. One evening, as heavy snow fell outside, the children arrived looking particularly cold and tired. Lily's cough worried Dorothy, a deep, chesty sound that made her small frame shudder. How long has she been coughing like that? Dorothy asked Robert while Lily was in the bathroom. Couple days, he admitted. Mom's coughing, too. The heat in our apartment building keeps going out. Dorothy frowned. Have they seen a doctor? Robert shook his head. Mom says we can't afford it right now. She lost her job last week. The hospital said she missed too many shifts. Dorothy felt a familiar knot of worry and frustration. She'd been in that exact position years ago, choosing between medicine and rent. Listen, I've got some cough syrup at home that might help. And maybe some extra blankets. After her shift ended, Dorothy drove the children home for the first time. Their apartment building was in even worse shape than she'd imagined. Peeling paint, broken windows patched with cardboard, and a front door that didn't lock properly. They led her up 3 flights of stairs, past graffiti-covered walls and the smell of mildew. Their apartment was small but surprisingly neat. Every surface was clean if worn. Mismatched furniture had been arranged with care. A few family photos hung on the walls. A thin woman sat at the kitchen table sorting pills from several orange prescription bottles. She looked up in surprise when the children entered with Dorothy. Despite her illness, she had the same warm eyes as her children, though now they were clouded with fever and suspicion. Who's this? She asked, her voice raspy. I'm Dorothy Wilson, she said, stepping forward. I work at Sonny's Diner. Your children have been visiting me. The woman's face fell. Oh God, Robert, Lily, have you been bothering this woman? I told you not to. They haven't been bothering anyone, Dorothy interrupted gently. They're wonderful kids. I just wanted to bring some food and medicine. She set down her bags on the counter. I'm a mom too. I know how hard it can get. The woman, Teresa, broke down then. Through tears, she explained how one illness had led to another, how medical bills had piled up, how losing her job had been the final blow. I never wanted my babies to go hungry, she whispered. I tried pawning my wedding ring yesterday, but it wasn't worth much. Dorothy sat with Teresa long after the children had fallen asleep. They talked as mothers, as women trying to survive in a world that often seemed designed to break them. By the time Dorothy left, she had promised to return, and Teresa had reluctantly accepted her help. Over the next month, Dorothy brought groceries when she could. She helped Teresa apply for assistance programs. When the landlord threatened eviction, Dorothy persuaded her own landlord to let Teresa and the children move into a vacant unit in her building temporarily, at a reduced rate. One February evening, As Dorothy counted her tips at the end of her shift, Mr. Peterson called her into his office. His thin face was set in grim lines as he showed her security camera footage of her giving free meals to Robert and Lily. "I've been watching this for weeks," he said coldly. "You've been stealing from me." "I haven't taken a dime," Dorothy protested. "I paid for those meals myself." "Not all of them," he countered. "And that food you box up to go? You think I don't see that?" Dorothy stared him down. "Those children were hungry. Not my problem. Not yours either." He drummed his fingers on the desk. "I should fire you." Dorothy's heart pounded. She couldn't lose this job. "Please. I've worked here 10 years. Never missed a shift, never been late." Mr. Peterson studied her for a long moment. "Here's what's going to happen. You'll pay back every cent of what you've given away. I've calculated it. $347.82. And you'll work Sunday mornings for the next 2 months without tips. That's my offer. Take it or leave with nothing." Dorothy swallowed hard. Sundays were her only day with her children. The money would drain what little savings she had. But she nodded. "I'll take it." When she told Teresa what had happened, the other woman was horrified. "You shouldn't have risked your job for us." "I'd do it again," Dorothy said simply. And she meant it. What she didn't know was that her troubles at work were just beginning, and that the children who had come into her life would soon disappear as suddenly as they had arrived, leaving her to wonder for years what had become of the family she had tried to help. Spring came to Detroit with its usual false promises. A few warm days gave way to bitter cold snaps, much like the way hope would flare and fade in Dorothy's life over the coming years. One morning in April, Dorothy arrived at the diner to find Teresa waiting outside, Robert and Lily at her side. The family looked different somehow. Teresa stood straighter and there was color in her cheeks. The children wore clothes Dorothy hadn't seen before. "My sister called yesterday," Teresa explained, her eyes bright with cautious optimism. "She's been looking for us since my phone got cut off. She lives in Cleveland, has a good job with the school district. She wants us to come stay with her until I get back on my feet." Dorothy felt a complicated mix of emotions, happiness for this struggling family, but also a sudden emptiness at the thought of not seeing them again. "When do you leave?" "Today," Teresa said. "My sister sent bus tickets. We're heading out at noon." She reached for Dorothy's hand. "I came to thank you. What you did for my children, I'll never forget it." "You would have done the same," Dorothy said, fighting back tears. Robert, usually so reserved, suddenly stepped forward and hugged her fiercely. Lily joined, wrapping her thin arms around Dorothy's waist. "We'll write to you," Robert promised. Dorothy watched them walk away, 3 figures growing smaller against the morning sun. Something told her that despite their promises, she wouldn't hear from them again. People moved on. Lives changed direction. Good intentions got lost in the rush of daily survival. She understood this, but it didn't ease the ache in her chest. She was right. No letters came. Dorothy checked her mailbox faithfully for weeks, then months, then only occasionally when a particularly strong memory of the children surfaced. By the time a year had passed, she had mostly stopped wondering about them, though they appeared sometimes in her dreams, Robert a little taller, Lily's smile a little wider. Life at Sonny's diner continued its predictable rhythm. Mr. Peterson watched Dorothy like a hawk for months after the incident, but eventually his attention drifted to other concerns: rising food costs, a leak in the kitchen roof, the new fast food place opening across the street. Dorothy worked her shifts, collected her tips, and tried to make ends meet. Her own children grew up. Tommy graduated high school with decent grades but no money for college. He found work at an auto parts factory, a job he claimed was temporary, but that slowly became his life. Lisa showed more academic promise and won a partial scholarship to community college. Dorothy picked up extra shifts to help with her textbooks and supplies, pride mixing with exhaustion as she served plates of eggs and pancakes at 6 in the morning after staying up late helping Lisa study. Years passed. The neighborhood around Sonny's diner changed, not always for the better. Some businesses closed, others opened. Faces at the counter came and went. Hank retired and was replaced by a younger cook who blasted hip-hop in the kitchen and experimented with the menu when Mr. Peterson wasn't looking. In 2015, after 20 years of ownership, Mr. Peterson announced he was selling the diner. His health was failing, and his children, both successful professionals in other cities, had no interest in running a struggling restaurant in Detroit. "What's going to happen to us?" Dorothy asked during a staff meeting, voicing the question on everyone's mind. "The new owners will decide," Mr. Peterson said with a shrug, as if 2 decades of his employees' loyalty meant nothing. The new owners turned out to be a young couple with big ideas and limited restaurant experience. They painted the walls a trendy gray, updated the menu with quinoa bowls and gluten-free options, and changed the name from Sonny's Diner to Rise and Dine. They kept most of the staff, recognizing the value of experienced employees, especially Dorothy, who by then knew every regular customer by name and order. "We'd like to promote you to assistant manager," Keith, the husband, told Dorothy one day. "You clearly know this place better than anyone." The promotion came with a modest raise but significantly more responsibilities. Dorothy now handled scheduling, some bookkeeping, and supplier relations, all while still serving customers during busy periods. The extra money helped, especially when Lisa decided to pursue a teaching degree, requiring 2 more years of education. But by 2020, Dorothy was 58 years old, with knees that ached in cold weather, and a back that never quite recovered from an injury she'd sustained lifting a heavy tray 3 years earlier. She'd been at the diner for almost 25 years, most of her adult life spent within these walls, serving food to strangers and watching the world change through the restaurant's windows. Then came the lump. She found it one morning in the shower, a small hard spot under her right arm that didn't belong there. The doctor's face was serious as he ordered tests, and Dorothy found herself in waiting rooms she couldn't afford, reading outdated magazines while fear gnawed at her insides. "It's not cancer," the doctor finally told her, the relief in his voice matching her own. "But we'll need to remove it and monitor you closely." Even with insurance, the medical bills strained Dorothy's modest savings to the breaking point. She'd been putting away a little money each month for years, dreaming vaguely of retirement, of maybe moving somewhere warmer where her joints wouldn't protest so much in winter. Now those dreams drained away with each payment to the hospital. Around the same time, Rise and Dine began to struggle. The trendy makeover had attracted some new customers initially, but they hadn't stayed. The regulars complained about the higher prices and smaller portions. Keith and his wife argued increasingly often in the office, their voices carrying through the thin walls. "We're losing money every month," Dorothy overheard Keith say one evening. "We can't keep going like this." "Maybe we should sell," his wife replied. "Cut our losses." A familiar fear settled in Dorothy's stomach. At her age, with her limited skills, where would she go if the diner closed? Who would hire her? The job market wasn't kind to aging black women with no college education, and a resume that listed only one workplace for the past quarter century. She thought about Tommy, now married with 2 children of his own, working the same factory job and living paycheck to paycheck. She thought about Lisa, who had finally become an elementary school teacher but was drowning in student loan debt. Neither of her children was in a position to help if Dorothy found herself unemployed. On a cold January morning in 2021, Dorothy stood at the diner's counter, looking out at the empty tables. Business had slowed to a trickle. The pandemic had hit them hard, and though they'd managed to stay open for takeout, customers were scarce. Keith had already laid off 2 servers and cut everyone else's hours. As Dorothy wiped down the counter, a motion outside caught her eye. 2 well-dressed young people getting out of an expensive-looking car. Something about them seemed vaguely familiar, though Dorothy couldn't place it. They paused outside, looking at the diner's sign, then at a piece of paper in the woman's hand. Dorothy watched as they approached the door, wondering if these might be potential buyers for the failing restaurant. The bell jangled as they entered, bringing with them a gust of cold air and the faint scent of expensive perfume. "Welcome to Rise and Dine," Dorothy said automatically, reaching for menus. The man, tall and confident in a tailored coat, looked at her with an intensity that made Dorothy slightly uncomfortable. The woman beside him seemed equally focused, her dark eyes studying Dorothy's face. "Do I know you folks?" Dorothy asked, the strange sense of familiarity growing stronger. The man glanced at his companion, then back at Dorothy. His voice was deep but held a note of uncertainty. "Ms. Wilson? Dorothy Wilson?" Dorothy's hand froze on the menus. No one had called her Ms. Wilson in years, and there was something in the way he said her name, something that pulled at threads of memory long tucked away. "Yes," she said slowly. "That's me." The young man's eyes softened. "You probably don't remember us," he began, his voice catching slightly. "But a long time ago you helped Robert?" Dorothy whispered, the menu slipping from her fingers. "Little Lily?" The woman's eyes filled with tears. "You do remember." Dorothy's hand flew to her mouth. The children she had fed, worried about, and eventually lost to time stood before her as adults. Successful, healthy, whole. The boy who had been so thin and serious was now a tall, confident man. The little girl with the ragged braid and cautious smile had transformed into a poised young woman. "My God," Dorothy breathed. "Look at you two." For a moment they all stood frozen, the weight of 15 years hanging between them. Then Lily stepped forward and wrapped her arms around Dorothy, and the years dissolved into nothing. "I can't believe we found you," Lily said, her voice muffled against Dorothy's shoulder. Dorothy pulled back to look at them properly, drinking in the details. They were well dressed in clothes that spoke of comfort without flashiness. Robert wore a simple gold wedding band. Lily's hair was cut in a stylish bob, so different from the careful braid her mother had done all those years ago. "Sit down," Dorothy said, gesturing to the nearest booth, the same one they had occupied as children, though they couldn't know that. "Let me get you some coffee." Her hands trembled as she poured 3 cups. Keith poked his head out of the office, curious about the new customers, but Dorothy waved him away. This moment belonged to her alone. When she returned to the table, Robert and Lily were looking around the diner, noting the changes. "It looks different," Robert said. "The name, the colors." "New owners about 5 years back," Dorothy explained, sliding into the seat across from them. "But underneath, it's still the same old place." She leaned forward, unable to stop staring at them. "What happened to you, your mom? Did Cleveland work out?" Robert and Lily exchanged glances. "It did," Lily said. "Aunt Patricia was amazing. She had a nice house, good job as a school administrator. She made sure we went to good schools, had what we needed. Mom got better," Robert added. "The doctors there figured out she had an autoimmune condition. Once they got her on the right medication, she improved a lot. Got a job at the same school district as Aunt Patricia. She wanted to contact you," Lily said quietly, "to thank you. But she lost your number during the move, and then time just went by." Dorothy nodded. "That's how life worked. Intentions got swept away in the current of daily existence." "And you two? You look like you've done well for yourselves." Robert smiled. "I'm a surgeon now, cardiothoracic. Finished my residency at Cleveland Clinic 2 years ago." Dorothy's eyes widened. "A heart surgeon? The little boy who was worried about algebra tests?" "He was always smart," Lily said with a teasing smile. "But yeah, he did okay for himself." "And you?" Dorothy asked. "I'm an attorney. Civil rights law mostly. Working for a nonprofit in Chicago." Dorothy felt a surge of pride so strong it brought tears to her eyes. "Your mama must be bursting with pride." A shadow passed across their faces. "She passed away 3 years ago," Robert said quietly. "Cancer? It happened pretty quickly." Dorothy reached across the table and squeezed his hand. "I'm so sorry. She was a good mother. I could tell how much she loved you." "She talked about you a lot," Lily said. "About what you did for us. She said you showed her that even when the world feels dark, there are still good people in it." Dorothy waved this away, uncomfortable with the praise. "I just fed you a few meals." "It was more than that," Robert insisted. "You showed kindness when we needed it most. You risked your job for us. We never forgot. Is that why you're here now? To say thank you? After all this time?" Dorothy asked, genuinely curious. Lily smiled. "Partly. We've been meaning to find you for years, but life got busy. I had law school, Robert had medical school. Then our mom got sick. But a few months ago I was at a medical conference here in Detroit," Robert continued. "I thought about trying to find you then, but my schedule was packed. When I got home, I couldn't stop thinking about it. About you. We decided it was time," Lily added. "We hired a private investigator. Took him a while. There are a lot of Dorothy Wilsons out there, but he tracked you to this diner." Dorothy laughed softly. "Not hard to find me. I've been right here for 25 years. "We knew that might be the case," Robert said, his expression turning serious. "And we wanted to ask, how are things for you now?" The question caught Dorothy off guard. She glanced around the nearly empty diner, aware suddenly of the worn edges of her uniform. The ache in her back, the constant worry about money that had become so familiar she hardly noticed it anymore. "I get by," she said simply. Robert and Lily shared another look, some silent communication passing between them. "We also came because we have a proposition for you," Robert said carefully. "We've been talking about it for a while." "What kind of proposition?" Dorothy asked, wariness creeping into her voice. "We heard this place might be for sale," Lily said. "Is that true?" Dorothy's heart skipped a beat. "Where did you hear that?" "Small towns have big gossip networks," Robert said with a smile. "And the internet makes information pretty accessible. The current owners have been trying to sell quietly, right?" Dorothy sighed. "Yes, they've had it on the market for a few months. No serious offers yet. The location's not great and restaurants are risky investments." A horrible thought struck her. "You're not thinking of buying it just to close it down, are you? Because a lot of people depend on their jobs here." "Actually," Lily said, leaning forward, "we were thinking of buying it to keep it open, but with some changes, improvements, and under new management." "What kind of management?" Dorothy asked, confused. "Yours," Robert said simply. Dorothy stared at him. "I don't understand." "We want to buy this place, renovate it, and make you the manager and part owner," Robert explained. "We'd be silent partners. You'd run the day-to-day operations." Dorothy felt like she couldn't breathe. "Why would you do that?" That's crazy." "It's not crazy," Lily countered. "It's an investment in someone who invested in us when we had nothing. Someone who saw hungry kids and didn't just feel sorry for them, she did something about it." "But that was 15 years ago," Dorothy protested, "and it was just a few meals." "To you, maybe," Robert said quietly. "To us, it was everything. It showed us that good people exist in the world. That kindness matters. Those lessons shaped who we became." Dorothy looked down at her coffee cup, overwhelmed. "I don't know what to say." "Say you'll think about it," Lily urged. "We're staying in town for a few days. Here's our contact information." She slid a business card across the table. "We can meet again tomorrow to discuss the details if you're interested." As they stood to leave, Dorothy remained seated, still processing what had just happened. Robert paused beside her. "There's one more thing," he said softly. "My wife and I had a baby girl last year." He pulled out his phone, showing Dorothy a photo of a beautiful brown-skinned baby with bright eyes. "We named her Dorothy." The tears Dorothy had been holding back spilled over. "You didn't?" "We did," he confirmed. "Because I want her to grow up to be like you, someone who sees a need and meets it no matter the cost. Someone who changes lives with simple kindness." After they left, Dorothy sat alone in the booth for a long time, the business card clutched in her hand, thinking about second chances and the way small acts of kindness could echo across years, returning when least expected. Dorothy didn't sleep that night. She sat at her small kitchen table until dawn, turning Robert and Lily's business card over in her fingers, thinking about roads not taken and second chances that came too late. She'd called her children after her shift. Tommy had been skeptical, his voice tight with protective worry. "Sounds too good to be true, Ma. People don't just show up after 15 years and hand out businesses." Lisa had been more open to the possibility. "Maybe they're genuine, Mom. Not everyone has an angle." By morning, Dorothy had made her decision. She would hear them out but keep her guard up. Life had taught her that windfalls often came with hidden costs. They met at a coffee shop downtown, neutral territory away from the diner's curious ears. Robert brought financial documents, business plans, architectural renderings. Lily had legal papers, contract drafts, partnership agreements. They had clearly been planning this for months, not days. "We want to restore it to a proper diner," Robert explained, showing Dorothy sketches of red booths, chrome fixtures, and a refurbished counter. "Keep the neighborhood feel but make it nicer. Better kitchen equipment, updated menu, maybe extended hours. And we want to call it Dorothy's," Lily added, watching for her reaction. Dorothy nearly choked on her coffee. "You want to name it after me?" "It was never Sonny's or Rise and Dine to us," Robert said gently. "It was always the place where Dorothy fed us." As they walked her through their vision, Dorothy's skepticism slowly gave way to cautious hope. They weren't offering charity. They were proposing a legitimate business partnership with Dorothy holding a 25% stake without investing a dime. They would be the financial backers. She would be the heart and soul of the operation. "Why me?" she asked finally. "I'm almost 60. No business training. No college degree." "You have something more valuable," Lily countered. "Experience. Community knowledge. Work ethic. And a kind of genuine warmth that can't be taught." Robert nodded. "Most restaurants fail because owners don't understand the day-to-day realities. You've lived those realities for 25 years. And," Lily said quietly, "we want to give back, not just to you but to others like us. Kids who need help, families struggling to get by." They proposed setting aside 10% of profits for a community fund, meal vouchers for hungry families, job training for single parents, emergency assistance for medical bills. The diner would become more than a business. It would be a lifeline, just as Dorothy had once been for them. Dorothy thought about her medical bills, about Lisa's student loans, about the retirement she'd never thought possible. She thought about all the other children who had come into her diner over the years, eyes too old for their young faces, hunger evident in more than their bodies. "Yes," she said simply, "I'm in." The transformation took 3 months. Keith and his wife were relieved to sell, accepting Robert and Lily's generous offer with almost indecent speed. The diner closed for renovations in April, scheduled to reopen in July. Dorothy visited the site daily, watching with amazement as crews tore out the trendy gray walls and restored the classic diner feel with modern touches. Robert had hired a top Detroit chef as a consultant to help develop a menu that honored traditional comfort food, while adding healthier options. Lily worked with local artists to create custom murals celebrating the city's history. Behind the scenes, Dorothy tackled the business education she'd never had. She took crash courses in restaurant management, bookkeeping, and food service regulations. At night, she practiced computer skills on the new laptop Robert had given her, determined not to be the weak link in this partnership. The grand reopening of Dorothy's Place was scheduled for July 15, 2021. The night before, Dorothy stood in the gleaming new kitchen, almost afraid to touch anything. The industrial-grade appliances, the spotless prep surfaces, the walk-in refrigerator stocked with fresh ingredients, it all seemed like a dream. Having second thoughts? Robert's voice startled her. He'd flown in from Cleveland for the opening, bringing his wife and baby daughter. "Just wondering when I'll wake up," Dorothy admitted. Robert smiled. "I felt the same way on my first day of medical school. Like someone would realize I didn't belong there and kick me out." "Did that feeling ever go away?" "Not entirely," he said honestly. "But that's what keeps us working hard, right? Knowing how lucky we are to be here." The reopening exceeded everyone's expectations. A line formed outside an hour before they opened. Local news crews showed up, drawn by the human interest angle. Former Waitress becomes owner of beloved local diner. Dorothy's children and grandchildren came. Tommy's earlier skepticism replaced by unmistakable pride as he watched his mother cut the ribbon across the front door. Lisa cried when she saw the small plaque near the entrance. Everyone deserves kindness, especially when they're hungry. The first month was exhausting but exhilarating. Dorothy worked longer hours than ever, but for the first time she was building something that would last beyond her next shift. The customers loved the new look, but appreciated that the soul of the place remained intact. Many of the old regulars returned, along with a new crowd drawn by word of mouth and positive reviews. True to their word, Robert and Lily stayed in the background, available for consultation but leaving day-to-day operations entirely to Dorothy. They had created a legal structure that would eventually allow her to buy their shares if she chose, or to pass her ownership stake to her children. By the 6-month mark, Dorothy's Place had become more than just a successful restaurant. The community fund had already helped 3 families with emergency housing assistance. A local teen's medical procedure had been partially funded, and most meaningful to Dorothy, a pay-it-forward wall allowed customers to pre-purchase meals for anyone who needed them. No questions asked, no shame attached. One cold December evening, as closing time approached, Dorothy noticed a woman standing outside with 2 young boys. They weren't dressed properly for the weather, and the woman kept checking her wallet, seemingly counting coins. Dorothy instantly recognized the hesitation, the mental calculations of how to feed hungry children with not quite enough money. Without a second thought, Dorothy went to the door and opened it wide. "Come on in," she called. "Kitchen's still open." The woman looked startled, then embarrassed. We can't really afford— Don't worry about that, Dorothy said, ushering them inside to the warmest booth. We've got a few pay-it-forward meals available. Someone already took care of it. As she served the family their dinner, proper meals, not just the cheapest menu items, Dorothy caught the older boy watching her with solemn eyes. She remembered another boy 15 years earlier, with that same careful expression, that same protective posture toward his younger sibling. Later, as they were leaving, the boy hung back for a moment. "Why did you help us?" he asked quietly. Dorothy smiled, thinking of Robert and Lily, of second chances and ripples of kindness. "Because someone helped me once when I needed it. And that's how the world should work. We take care of each other." The boy nodded seriously, as if memorizing her words. Dorothy watched him go, wondering what his future held, knowing she had perhaps changed its course in some small way. That night, Dorothy sat at the diner's counter after everyone else had gone, looking around at the physical manifestation of a circle completed, from a hungry child to a successful doctor, from a struggling single mother to a business owner, from one act of kindness to a cascade of opportunities for others. The journey wasn't perfect or easy, but it was real, and it mattered. She touched the small framed photo she kept near the register, Robert and Lily as children, standing with their mother outside the Cleveland bus station on the day they left Detroit. Teresa had mailed it to Dorothy a few weeks after they arrived safely, her only communication before life carried them all in different directions. "We did okay, didn't we?" Dorothy whispered to the faded photo. "We all did okay."